Hey, welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. And today we'll be talking about great things happen on purpose. And what this means is the more you know what you're aiming for, the more intentional you become, that makes great things possible. Now, there are times where things do come together by accident, but those are pretty rare situations. Kind of like the lottery, where many who play are hoping to win big money, that the little work involved for a big reward is enticing enough to get people involved. But obviously there's a 1 in 292 million chance of actually winning it. What gives us a greater probability of achieving what we want is to consistently work towards it. If you look at vibrant communities, thriving organizations, high-achieving teams, or high-performing individuals, they're made possible because they planned on it. They identified specific things that they wanted to achieve and found ways to make it happen. Whether it's a company like Apple, who's had a tremendous amount of growth, the NFL football team, the New England Patriots, who've won 6 Super Bowls, or the founder and CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, who's dominated the electrical vehicle market, the commonality that they all shared is being clear on what they were working towards and outlining the daily actions needed to achieve what they want. Their relentlessness fuels them to give their best each day, and this leads them to getting better that produces tremendous results. Their ability to adapt along the way is what makes their goals achievable. If their achievements are only seen as a moment in time, they can seem so complex that can make us wonder, how did they make all this come together? To help us better understand the complexity, it all starts with the basics. Having the basics squared away, which includes doing everything with excellence, that can then be combined and built upon. If this is thought of as a brick house where the individual bricks are simple yet strong, they're put together and stacked on each other with eventually cement to bind them together. And this makes a big unit that can leave us in awe of a big, wonderful house. But if there are a few bricks that have cracks or do not hold up well, it can affect the structure of the house. And too many of them will affect the quality of the home. If we apply this to what we do on a daily basis, we ensure that the things we do are with excellence that adds up over time. The results are great things happening on purpose. It may take trying over and over again, but eventually we will get better at it, getting us closer to that target that we're aiming for. When we know clearly what we want, we have a better chance of outlining clear actions that needs to be taken to get us there. Half of the battle is figuring out how to make things happen. And when the daily actions are understood, it gives us a ability to be more purposeful, and being more purposeful leaves an indent, such as footprints in the mud, where we left our mark that serves as evidence that the road was traveled. In being purposeful, the follow-through of what you do becomes greater, that carries more weight, produces more power, and can tip the scale in your favor. It adds that extra oomph that resonates further why you do what you do. The way you do everything, from how you see things that affect your attitude, how you talk, how you walk, to how you execute the simplest things, becomes elevated. With that greater sense of purpose in what you do, the way you see things becomes about understanding the big picture and focusing on the details that align with it. Your attitude will follow it because it's the catalyst for what makes you do anything. The way you speak exudes confidence that carries a strong tone that signals you're steering the ship how you see fit and not merely along for the ride. The pace at which you walk becomes quicker because your strides become longer, and this signals the efficiency in your time, wanting to get things done in a timely manner. And your actions become about doing things swiftly and with excellence, from how you get ready in the morning to how well you focus on what's in front of you. Instead of waiting to feel like you're ready for the day or ready for the task at hand, you make yourself ready to take on what you will encounter. These behaviors that become elevated will have a tremendous impact on the things that you come across. People will respond accordingly, where you attract the people you need and dispel those that do not contribute to your purpose. The work that you do becomes that much better, that speaks for itself. Instead of spending time wondering what needs to be done or tiptoeing your way through things, it now becomes about being more direct, operating with a greater amount of urgency. It's about being in a controlled state, but not rushing through things merely to get them done. That doing things well, even if it takes a little longer, is fine if it means doing it right or to the best of your abilities. Where perfection is eliminated and it's all about progress. This helps to let go of being so worried about possible mistakes, so you can focus your effort on getting better each time. So when mistakes do happen, they are not felt so intensely, but reminders on what to improve on. Operating with a purpose gives you fuel to move past the obstacles and challenges that you come across, because you'll tell yourself that the want of getting to what you're striving for is so much greater than the temporary disappointment or the pain that you're currently experiencing. Having this sense of intensity empowers you to make things happen, where it just becomes a matter of time before the things that you set for yourself materialize, because that belief you built. It can be incredibly difficult to pursue goals or targets without the state of intent, because there's the feeling that your all is being held back as that self-doubt hangs around when uncertainty is evident in how you operate. While there is no certainty on how things play out, there is certainty in how we choose to come at life. A few things to start doing to be more intent is by doing the simple things with a greater emphasis, such as the way you tie your shoes, the way you greet people, the way you organize your space, the way you get out of bed, or the way you get up from sitting down, or the way you talk, or the way you walk towards something. By doing this, it will roll over into everything else. So when things get rough, you approach it with a greater emphasis. Think about if your mood is to wait for things to happen. It will be more of a cautious approach, because the focus is to slow down and watch things. This will likely carry over if it relates to a problem such as mold occurring in the house from a small water leak. It can appear minor at first glance, but if not taken care of right away, the mold will spread and the leak can get bigger. The wait and see approach can turn out to be very costly. With a more purposeful approach, you're more likely to get it fixed before it becomes a big issue. Starting small helps build momentum so you can take your intensity to a higher level. This acclimates you at a moderate level so the change, the growth, becomes more manageable. And when we feel things are too slow for our liking, we are more equipped to ratchet it up a notch. Sometimes with a greater enthusiasm, we bite off more than we can chew, and this can discourage us from going forward with those lofty expectations we put on ourselves, where we start off on level 1 and we immediately want to reach level 9. Allowing ourselves to settle into the changes we've adopted increases our chances of it sticking. Now, if the change seems like there's very little resistance, then it'd be a good idea to turn it up some. Just like working out, if it provides very little challenge, then the results are going to be very minimal. Getting into the rhythm of doing everything, or at least some things with a greater emphasis, you can build on it by being ambitious. Throw out telling yourself that what you want or plan on working towards is impossible. It only appears that way because enough thought has not yet been given to it. The more that you can think, comprehend it, and find ways to make it happen, the more real and attainable it becomes. You start to in a sense, pull back that curtain to see what's behind those great ideas that you come up with. And the more that you're able to investigate, search, and find answers, the more comfortable you become in pursuing them. If you initially think that the ideas are crazy, then you're on the right track. It means you're letting your creative side come about, and this is exactly what's needed to go beyond what is physically seen that's going to help transcend you. If you look at many common things today, they were a big breakthrough when they occurred and are still spectacular today. The things like electricity, cars, airplanes, refrigeration, growing food on a mass scale, the internet. These are all things that people had initial ideas of wanting to do, but it required time to rationalize on how to make it happen. Yes, in many of these cases, it took a long time for them to come about into use, but it got going and eventually was adopted as a commonality. Many people back then would not embrace ideas like this because it was something that needed to be imagined. And this still holds true today and will continue to be present because many people do not share the vision of those that pioneer a new or different way of doing things. That's why there's always going to be many doubters, because of that unique perspective that is carried by those visionaries. Having a strong desire for something more that requires determination and hard work is a magnificent thing to embrace. It expands us past our limits where we think we're unable to go any further, only to find out significant growth has occurred. Experiencing this only deepens that belief that we can do what we set out for ourselves. The starting point is not when this comes about, but when we are facing those tough times, when we're most vulnerable and self-doubt is just ready to pounce. That is when our ambition will be tested to see how much we're willing to endure and find ways to pursue it. Think of when you were a kid, or if you look at all the kids around you, they have a very unique way of viewing the world, and they just let things happen where their creativity and their energy really takes over, where that freedom of what's possible just comes about that lets them color outside the lines, create imaginary games, and just let them be. But over time, what ends up happening is life tends to beat out that enthusiasm that we once had because of the disappointment, disillusion, the heartache that was experienced. Where those times where we've been bitten makes us think twice about not going for it. And this keeps us in what's comfortable because it means a level of safety right now in the short term. But this compromise means we're willing to settle for less than what we really want. And this weakens that belief within ourselves, where it becomes about avoiding the risk of getting hurt only to risk missing out on incredible opportunities. So we have to find ways to cultivate and let ourselves recover from all those setbacks that we will experience. Remind yourself on what's possible, as it keeps that childlike curiosity to develop. Just because we're growing doesn't mean that we have to leave behind all the joys that we experienced as kids. The things like our favorite cartoons, shows, or movies, or the activities like playing sports or playing with friends does not mean they need to be left behind so we can grow. They are a part of who we are, and we should continue to indulge in these things to keep us filled with energy, ambition that makes us strive for what we imagine. We have to remind ourselves that we will still experience the pain of setbacks, but doing these things that we did as kids helps us recover quicker, that makes us more resilient. This allows that pent-up urge to catch up with all that wisdom that we gained along the way. In the short term, the challenges and rough periods that we face can be difficult to manage, but over the long term, they serve as lessons that we can apply going forward. As kids, we want to fly and do some really far out things, but with that experience we gain, it equips us to be able to fly without having to do it recklessly. Let's be patient with ourselves by providing that space to be our inner kid and still forge ahead with what we set out to do. For these great things to happen on purpose, you got to make sure you know what it is that you're working towards. The more specific you are in identifying what that is, the better chance you have at outlining a plan so you can meet those expectations. You don't need to know exactly the details of what you want, but a specific idea helps to clear up where you should focus your attention to. If what you're striving for is vague, it can be very difficult to know what exactly to do daily to get where you want to be. You might not be sure if what you're doing is getting you closer or not. A very loose thing to say is, I want to have a better life or a better way of making a living. And this is a great starting point as you're identifying the general direction you want to go. The next step would be to refine what specifically you want, such as to have a better life. It's by enjoying what you do daily, and then you can identify what that is. So maybe what you enjoy daily is working with animals, and you can narrow it down to becoming a veterinarian, a zookeeper, a dog trainer, a horse trainer, animal breeder, whatever it is. By taking the time to narrow these options down, you're thinking through what path you would enjoy the most. Obviously, all the good things come to mind when we're thinking about what we enjoy, but take it a step further and look at some of the not so glamorous things that might be overlooked, such as it might be really long hours in a specific direction that you take, or it might take a very long time to get to the end goal, or you might be working with really hard to deal with animals. Whatever it is, at least you're working your way through the difficult parts that you can expect, and working through this helps you find out if that's something you're willing to do. There are times where all the glitz and glamour grabs our attention and we forget to see what's behind all that it takes. And this can surprise us and makes us retreat or at least reconsider, where we say, why did I go through with this? Being able to evaluate the not so fun parts you want to pursue helps you reset those expectations so you're prepared to go through it. But if you realize that is something that's not for you, this saves you time so you can find the right fit. If we forget to ask ourselves these types of questions, we might just go through it halfway, not giving our full effort that's going to show up in the results or the lack of what we want because our reasoning for doing it has not yet been answered. And when it is left unanswered, the conviction in which you do things becomes dull. This can affect your confidence if you want to try something else, where you look at the past and say, I didn't even do well before, so why am I going to take on something else? The effort in which you do things is the difference in the results that you get. The less effort, the less quality the results will be. Even when you know what it is that you're working towards, many of the unknowns and surprises will come about that can rattle you. Just know that that's okay. It might throw you off where you feel if you're really cut out for this, and this is a time to gather yourself, to regroup and refocus. If your reason is strong enough for why you're in your pursuit, you'll find a way. These are those times where you are tested to see how much you're willing to overcome the struggles that you're facing. Embrace these times as opportunities to be better for it, because it means that resourcefulness is going to be strengthened. The natural feeling that we all experience is that of dreading the situation, where the worry rears its head at the forefront of our thinking. When this happens, find a way to get back to a level head, because those big wave of emotions will be crucial to handle, so the decisions that are made are based on a desire to thrive and not merely survive. Many times, for us to thrive, it involves going through difficult moments, because that is a chance to experience growth. If we decide not to handle these tough times well and are only concerned about feeling good, then we become stagnant and more prone to put fault in everything outside of our control. We want to avoid falling into that victim mentality and instead hold ourselves accountable. When we're able to set standards for ourselves and be accountable, we ensure that the great things will happen. These clear set of expectations become the priority of what we need to do every day. This can include the attitude that you embrace, the behaviors that you will model, in the actions that you take. So if the standard is to have an attitude that's all about focusing on the things within your control and cutting out the excuses, you're more likely to make significant progress because you'll tend to cut out the things out of your control, which gives you greater energy on the things that you can affect. Things like planning your day on what you will get done helps you be more efficient because instead of wondering what the day will bring, you're too busy setting up the course of action. And when things don't go according to plan or you come up short in a certain area, you're figuring out how to be better the next time instead of needing validation for why things didn't work out. Sometimes we come up short because we're just not good enough on that specific day. And being willing to acknowledge that can hurt initially, but it's needed to make progress. Or having those behavioral standards, such as keeping calm when things get tough, is another great example of ensuring that great things will be created. Many people, when times are difficult, will panic and want to retreat to what is easy. But by you having that composure to handle things when it's unsettling is what gives you the chance to see it through. If you look at all the stock market crashes, which is known as a bear market, they can last an average of 1.3 years with a cumulative loss of 38%, while the average bull market, which is when the market is trending upward, lasts about 6.6 years with a cumulative gain of 339%. So by being willing to buy stocks when everyone else is panicking, this can produce tremendous results if you can stay composed and take advantage of the situation. The instinct will be to flee the chaos, but being willing to look past the fear is a time where opportunity is so much more abundant. The final component of that standard that you set is knowing the action you will take. Having that predetermined way of executing things makes things flow so much smoother instead of freezing, not knowing what to do. These are the things like taking the initiative to get things done, such as making the sales call to potential clients to grow your business, working out in the morning to live healthy, or continuously gaining more information and learning so you can make the next big move that you want. Eventually, all the action that you take will add up to the results that you get. The better your actions are, the better the results will be. So in whatever it is that we choose to do, whether it's the task at hand or making those big goals or dreams a reality, it all starts with a purposeful effort. You may or you may not get what you were striving for, but that consistent effort will eventually lead to those great results. Sometimes what we achieve is not exactly what we're expecting, but it might be even greater. Many things were discovered or accomplished in some ways without the exact plan, but through the purposeful action of making something great is what came about. If you look at many of the things that we eat today, like chocolate chip cookies, potato chips, or cornflakes, they were all made possible by trying to make a specific thing only to get something else that was quite a nice surprise. Chocolate chip cookies were intended to be chocolate cookies, but ran out of baker's chocolate. Potato chips were cut out of spite with a customer who said the chips he got were too soggy. Cornflakes were intended to be a granola and was left out for several days on the counter, and then it was toasted, which created the cereal many people eat today. All of these things were made possible because the people had a purpose of one thing and got something else. Let's not let the short-term results or the lack of them deter us from continuously giving our best. Many of the things that we're doing and working towards should be done with intent, because we never know how close we are to breaking through to something great that will unleash the floodgates to what is possible. The results will probably not show up tomorrow or next week, but eventually they will if we have prepared and tried enough. In the meantime, do everything you can with a purpose. Talk with a purpose, walk with a purpose, and act with a purpose, because it will make a difference in what you're doing. It's that time again. I hope you all enjoy this podcast. If you're interested in more topics like this, please become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. We have our monthly member meeting coming up next week, so please join today and we can have further discussions on topics like this. All right, until next time.